ISBA, the industry body representing advertisers, and consultancy PwC have finally released their long-awaited report on the programmatic ad market, and for the first time anywhere in the world they have quantified the end-to-end value of its supply chains. 2 years in the making, a time frame which in itself points to the complexity of a system many want to change, the report unveiled some alarming figures. In this interview, I speak with Phil Smith, the Director General of ISBA, and the report's author, Sam Tomlinson, who heads up the media assurance team at PwC, to gauge their reactions to the findings and to understand what must happen next as the market looks to find a solution. I'm David Pidgeon, the editor of Mediatel News, and if you have any questions during this live stream, please use the hashtag FOMT and we'll try to get them answered. Here's Phil and Sam. Hi, Phil. Hi, Sam. How are you doing today?
Very good, well, thank you. Good, David.
I'm glad that lockdown has not stopped you from getting this report out. Now, there's lots in this report, and you can read, listeners, to a pretty detailed account on Mediatel News. You can also download it from ISBA's website. But the investigation into supply chains of the UK's programmatic ad market, and that's the premium end, we're not even looking at the long tail here, has shown that 15% of all marketing spend disappears into what I called a black hole, while only half of investment is making it to publishers. So that's only 51p in every pound on average making it to the working media. So what we have is a hugely valuable market, around 2 billion quid in the UK, but basically a third of supply chain costs that cannot be effectively audited because it's so complex. Now, elsewhere during this conference, we'll hear from the ad tech players, and there's responses from publishers and marketers already on Mediatel News that you can go and check out. But one of my favourite quotes summing all this up was one publisher who simply called it all mind-boggling. So, Phil, let's start with you. What's ISBA's reaction to the findings, and how does this make your members feel?
Well, we knew it was complex, and we knew from the amount of time that it took to get the data to allow us to perform the study, that it was going to be an interesting picture, to say the least. But I think the thing that really stuck out for me was just how low overall the match rate was by comparison with the market in total. It's astonishing that given the team that we had of auditors and data scientists on this, that it was so hard to get the results out. And I think Graham Adams from BT summed it up well, and he said, this is a really important market for them. It works, but the findings are stark. And I'd say, the advertisers who have really supported us all the way through this study are really determined to see change come out of the back of it.
Sam, let's get your reaction too, but as the author, could you also explain some of the challenges your team had in producing the report? Because I think that in itself is really important.
Yes, absolutely. So if we rewind to last June 2019, we had 15 advertisers working through 8 different agencies, ready and signed up. We had 12 premium publishers ready and signed up, all actively wanting to share their data. But it then took another 9 months to actually get that data. And it's that really complex series of delays and permissionings that are one of the fundamental findings of the study. To try to bring that to life, once the publishers had signed up, they typically directed us to their SSPs, asking us to get the log level, or aggregate data directly from the SSPs. The SSP reaction was typically along the lines of, well, that means that we need amended terms with our DSP, because our DSP arrangement only allows us to share data with a publisher, and you're not a publisher, PwC, you're a publisher's representative. And this is where the problems start to happen, because you've got, in this study, 6 SSPs, each going separately to the 5 DSPs with a slightly different request. That's immediately 30 sets of permissionings that you need. Then a number of those DSPs felt they had to go back to their agency. So that you then multiply that up by the 8 agencies in the study. Some of those agencies felt they needed to go right back to the advertiser, at which point you've worked your way right the way along the supply chain back to where you started, because the advertisers were the ones who set up and funded the study in the first place. And so you've got some real challenges there around data access. Once you get the data, the formatting is hugely inconsistent in terms of data definitions, data taxonomies, either unlabeled or unclear data fields. Some of the tech vendors are better and some are less good than others at disentangling one client's data from another. No consistent date formats, and certainly no unique identifier to track a single impression. And that's the overarching single biggest finding of the whole study is that urgent need to standardize data access and data formatting.
So on that front then, Phil, what do you want to see happen as a consequence of all of this?
I think we know that the industry can't continue in this way. And what we want to see is exactly what Sam's just described. We'd like to see the industry come together and agree to the standardization of formatting and storage and transfer of data in a way that allows this type of audit to become standard practice. It just seems to us completely unacceptable that large advertisers and publishers, buyers and sellers can't see through their own supply chains.
You mentioned in the release that there was likely to be a task force set up. What's likely to happen there? Is, how can the industry organise itself to help fix this?
Well, we would hope that we can pull together a task force that involves not just the buy and the sell side, but the advertising technology companies as well. And we've certainly sought to mobilize the IAB's good offices in this as well. And it would be our intent for that task force to be multi-partite and to work exactly on what we've just described with a common set of goals which allow there to be traceability through the supply chain.
Sam, what advice would you give to brands now that the report has hit the industry?
I think the first thing I do is give a word of caution that we, this study is, as you've mentioned, the most premium end of programmatic. So this is, the most prestigious advertisers, premium publishers, the largest tech vendors. Even within that universe, because of the data quality issues, we only match 12% of impressions. So we are very confident that our report accurately reports the data for those 31 million matched impressions, but we certainly can't say that that is representative of the unmatched impressions, let alone representative of long tail programmatic. So I think people need to be careful and remember that this represents the best of the best. The second thing I would say to advertisers is it's really important. This is such a complex area. It's really important to have the best possible people working on your accounts. So if I was a brand, I would go and find the strongest agency programmatic team that I could, and I would be prepared to pay a premium to have them working on my campaigns. I would then also be encouraging that agency team to do a lot of private marketplace, because private marketplace, more money reaches the publishers, and it also significantly reduces your fraud viewability and brand safety risks, which weren't a direct focus of this study, but clearly are important areas. And then finally, I would be urging brands to really lean into the ISBA-led industry initiatives to resolve some of these issues around data access and data formatting and the unknown delta.
Phil, do you have a separate message perhaps to those operating in the supply chain? From my point of view, it just looks very murky, and I think journalists can perhaps start using terms like shady middlemen and so on. But there are people in the supply chain that are there because they are valuable and that it won't work without them. So what's the overarching message to the operators in the supply chain?
Well, I think it's absolutely not our message that there's something murky or shady here. First thing we'd want to say is thank you to the technology companies who helped us and participated in the survey. What became really apparent from talking to them is that people have such limited visibility outside their own individual company just because of the same lack of traceability that we found in trying to put the study together. So I think for those who are interested in creating a sustainable business and a sustainable business model for the future, it's absolutely in their interest to participate in this study going forward, and we'd encourage them to do that. And we'd have no reason to see why they wouldn't wish to as well, because many of them position themselves as being transparent and legitimate operators, which we'd absolutely like to be able to reinforce for them.
And Phil, again, if things don't get better, if things aren't cleaned up, and if the transparency cannot be found, what's likely to happen?
Well, it's hard to predict. And the first thing to say is we really, really hope that the industry will come together. This is an area that is within the scope of the current ongoing CMA inquiry that will report in the summer. And the Competition and Markets Authority has shown interest in this particular report. We think it would be a mistake for the industry to allow this to pass into an area where it becomes necessary for there to be a regulatory intervention, usually because regulatory interventions have unintended consequences. And right now we have a window of opportunity to shape our own destiny, and that's what we'd like to see happen.
Sam, it's I think an obvious question to like any outsider just looking in on this would be, should marketers just de-invest in programmatic until they can gain full visibility? Is that a contentious point to make?
So that's certainly not a conclusion that we would draw. As a team, we are pro programmatic, provided it's done well. So I think there are clear benefits for brands in the ability to target audiences in real time, but you just want to have absolute confidence that that your money is genuinely reaching a non-fraudulent, viewable, brand-safe impression, and that as much of your money as possible is reaching publishers, and that is a premium publisher, operating in a good context. So we certainly wouldn't be recommending that brands pull away from programmatic. We'd be recommending that they do it well. And coming back to previous points, I think that means having a really strong agency team. It means looking at premium publishers and private marketplace. Not exclusively, but that would be where I would focus if I was a brand.
What's your view on that, Phil?
Well, our members say that this channel works for them, and it allows them to support the publisher community. So that they want to see programmatic work. They'd like to see it work a lot better and in a way which is more transparent.
So, Sam, what will it take to make these supply chains auditable? How big is the task?
The
ISBA themselves are talking about a sort of 2-year time horizon, and that's sort of 12 months to align people around protocols for data access and data formatting, and then another 12 months to properly embed that change and dig into the data, the much cleaner data that would result. That sounds like a sensible time frame to me. It's taken us, depending on how you measure it, it's taken us about 15 months to get this study delivered. I would like to think that in 2 years' time, there would be a world where when advertisers and publishers want to share data, that can happen, if not overnight, then certainly within a couple of days. Once that data is shared, it's in a format that's very clearly understood, that the impressions have a single identifier that can be matched. And then at that point, you're immediately into the data analysis. So that's what we should be aiming for, but it'll take us some time to get there.
Phil, is there a fair figure, do you think, that publishers should be able to receive as the working media? Is it just all a bit arbitrary as it stands, or if we can identify the unknown delta, could it possibly mean by cleaning up the supply chain that publishers can receive something approaching a more consistent, maybe 70-75%?
I don't know, what a fair figure would be. I'm not really very well qualified to give a number there, but it does seem to me that it's difficult to generalize, and not all publishers are the same, but it would certainly seem that it's very hard to see how you sustain original journalism and premium publishers on the basis of 51p in the pound. And you'd certainly hope that as you look through the supply chain as it's meant to operate, that there is more that should be available for publishers based on the current contractual arrangements.
We're drawing to a close of the conversation. Do you guys have, we'll start with you first, Phil, but do you have, what do you want to happen now that the report has landed? What are the immediate next steps, given that there are so many different people, so many different stakeholders involved in this? What do you want to see happen immediately?
Well, I would like to see a core group mobilised that would have us in a pivotal position. I'd like to see the IAB and the agency community as part of that, and I would like to see a number of the key tech vendors leaning into it as well.
What's your view, Sam?
I think there's really promising signs already. I think in all of our debriefs, it's been clear that the people want to recognise that this is an important area and want to spend more time on it and are willing to invest that time. And it's this will need concerted collaborative action. So in a number of our debriefs, advertisers and publishers have said, what are the messages for us individually? And clearly you do get some of that coming from the study, but actually the most powerful findings from the study are those for the industry as a whole. Because this is the data access and the data formatting is a systemic issue. It's not specific to any one advertiser or publisher or agency or tech vendor.
And to close, can I just get a sense of the level of optimism you might have that this can be sort of resolved in a decent time frame? Because COVID-19 has already put an awful lot of pressure on the ad market as it is. Publishers are really important, more now than perhaps ever. But these sorts of issues have been around for years, and they need fixing much sooner rather than later. So what are the levels of optimism that the industry can get this fixed, and we can actually see more money make it to the working media?
I think the current situation should give us more optimism. People are going to be less tolerant of waste and inefficiency in the world that we emerge into, and I think that's going to make, as you say, an even more impatient urgency to finding a solution.
Sam?
I would agree completely with that. I'm optimistic by nature, and I'm confident that. Where there's a will, there's a way, and I think that the reaction over the last few days has shown that everybody, and as I said, and that's right the way across advertisers, agencies, tech vendors, and publishers. Everyone that we've spoken to is keen that this is resolved for the benefit of programmatic as a whole.
There we go. Well, thanks both for joining me, Sam and Phil, and best of luck on this enormous task at hand. But it feels like now is the right time to actually fix some of these things. As quite a few of our commentators have pointed out, I think this downtime that we're experiencing is a point of reflection and then some recalibration. So I think the report landed at a pretty good moment, actually. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.